this demo tutorial, I'm going to cover how to create, initialize, and deploy a STC, Secure Trusted Channel Enabled Service. What is STC compared to NTLS? In short, compared to the default method of NTLS where you set up that tunnel between your Luna client and the HSM appliance, this takes it a step further. You'll have a TLS tunnel, and on top of that, an additional layer of encryption and message authentication on the channel that is set up to the partition level. And that's the most important part here, is that you're terminating the connection inside the partition compared to at the appliance NIC level. So additional layer of protection, additional layer of overhead that you need to account for. CCC supports either one, so let's make one here. How do we do that? First, create a service anytime as before that we've done. I'll call it STC Service. Not very creative, right? I have a template. The template must enable STC. Must have it as an option. So the other ones here that we used in the past, they are not using STC. It doesn't check it. So by default, we use NTLS. So I'm going to use STC. Secure DevOps template. From there, I'll add a password HSM. Doesn't have to be a password HSM. It's just what I'm using right now for the demo. Use my CryptoPKI.org. And there we go. Right before I create it, you'll see that Secure Trusted Channel is pending. It is pending because this is controlled by the partition security officer. So once again, on the partition level here. And you need to create a client token, soft token in this demo, as well as pull down the partition's public identity, and there's an exchange of certificates there. So this can only be done by the partition security officer, and that means we first need to initialize the partition. So it will still say enabled until we actually deploy it here on this Windows server as our Luna client. Great. I'm going to initialize it. I'm going to initialize it as the admin. Afterwards, we can deploy it using our JSmith demo app owner. But for now, I'm just going to stay within the console and initialize it on behalf of the app owner. Once again, same thing. I keep using STC partition, STC service, even though it is a partition, right? Give it a cloning domain. Nothing new here under the sun. Security officer. This is the partition security officer. And this will be very important because we're going to use those credentials to log in and set up STC during the registration from the client side. I'm not going to initialize the crypto user. Crypto officer is enough in this demo, and then click finish. This is going to initialize the partition, but it's not going to enable STC just yet. Once again, I'm not enabling STC here. I'm initializing the partition, but it will still by default be accepting NTLS clients for now. When we shift to the client side in the command line, you'll see on the Luna client what I'm going to do. So it is set up. You'll see under the partition, it is, initialized with a label. Everything is working there. The roles are set up. STC is still pending. It's still pending. Let's jump to the command line and deploy this. Okay, so I already have the CCC client jar copied over as before, and we're going to run the command to register. And I'm going to use the app owner JSmith, and you'll need an app owner to deploy it. Because I created as the admin and initialized the service and assigned it an organization which is required, JSmith is within that organization, so we'll see all the services assigned. We're not going to specify the password, just the host and port. Now, the same as before, I'm going to trust the certificate of the server. We're going to register using my host name of this Windows server machine, And we'll see several services, right? As I said before, they're all within the same organization. In this case, the STC service. It's going to warn you, hey, are you sure you want to authorize this? Once you authorize it for a PPSO service, this tool cannot be used to revoke it. And I'll show what revoking looks like in another video demo. But in this case, this actually prevents you from getting locked out of partition with no client connections, which would be unrecoverable, which in this case would cause a lot of chaos. So the partition security officer, right, is managing, as the name suggests, the partition compared to the HSM security officer, which does not have access to it. So if they want to do that, they would need to revoke it using LunaCM. If you're confused, what about a PPSO service versus a regular service? This terminology is more from legacy purposes in the Luna 6, where you could configure STC and PPSO service partition using a license, right? PPSO was a licensed feature, which is now in Luna 7 the default. So if you're not sure what it is in Luna 7, it doesn't matter because every partition is using PPSO now. So I'm going to authorize access, confirm. When I confirm, it's going to say, hey, there's no client identity here. There's a soft token approach I'm using, so you need to create a client identity to perform that exchange. This is different than just pure NTLS certs that you have also created. So we're going to make one. I'll give it a name. Then it's going to say, okay, to configure it to create this client to perform the partition cert exchange and pull down the partition public key, we need the PSO password, which is why we couldn't really do this in the CCC console. So we're going to register that service now as an STC client. Let's give it a label. So one is the token and one is the client that's stored on this sub token. You can use the hard token, but that's now deprecated because you can't even get the E token anymore. And everything I'm doing here is STC version 1. That's pre Luna 7.7. If you're talking about Luna 7.7, as I said, it's not supported and STC was revamped, so you can't even use the latest universal client. You'll probably run into a problem and an error. So as you can see, I registered the client with the partition, registered the partition service and my client. So that's just performing the manual exchange that you would have to run on your own using several commands from Lush or in Luna CM manually. And there we go. So you can see the partition was registered, its identity, the serial number, the hash that corresponds with it, and that's it. If I go to Luna CM, I should be able to see one service, which is the STC one we just created. How do we know we are really communicating using the secure trusted channel? You can pull up the STC commands, pull up the status. You can see we are connected. It is working. If I want to look at the token, the soft token that's being used, you'll see that's one I created. We can also view the identity associated with that. So we'll see the identity name on the soft token. We'll see the label of the partition and so on. And that's it.